على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So we're going to, inshallah, cover some topics, touch upon a few topics that people have in the last 20 years asked a lot of questions about, and make this channel into a place where we can interact and cover those questions and those inquiries that many people have. I will be available, inshallah, on these live streams. If the people in the Patreon or other whatever platform we're going to be using for questions and answers they can easily interact with us. At the same time, we'll try to post all the information for free as well. But if you want to be part of the community and support the other work that we're doing, because from the funds of these live streams, we will inshallah support the treatment of those vulnerable and some of the people who are in needs. They're going to be under my care under the non-for-profit organization. Then your interaction and support of the channel will go towards the infrastructure and the treatments and the uprunning of our non-for-profit, but hopefully will provide well beyond your well worth the contributions that you make, and to try to be as available as possible for everybody, inshallah. And of course, if you can't, there's still a free option, as well as the questions and the videos being uploaded onto YouTube. So among the many topics that we'll cover, we'll try to cover a portion of the book, which definitely is at the center of a good life, the moral compass, the meaningfulness and purpose of life. And without having God in our life, Allah, ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب, that is it not with the remembrance of your Lord do the hearts find rest. It is the essence of how we will approach this topic of health, because we are health and spirituality, and we'll cover all the peripheral topics of health as well, inshallah. Mind body medicine, nutrition, exercise and peak performance, children's health. I'll discuss all the aspects of all the things that we do in our clinical practice that benefits people, and hopefully because we don't have a capacity for having lots of patients, at least people can benefit and take these instructions home and benefit their health, inshallah. So we'll do what dreams, how to interpret dreams. We can look at herbal medicine, Islamic medicine books, whatever it is that is very relevant. I'll be, inshallah, tuned into the community and be available for you guys. My own work as well. Although this is not directly related to medicine, it is. I feel it's the most important aspect of life that has to be solved, and it will give us the health that we're seeking once we understand what we're here for. Purpose and guidance and meaning in life is just essential for our well-being, our psychological health, our social well-being, and it has deep impact that I will try to make connections for over time between the mind and the body. So although the book doesn't talk specifically about medicine, it helps to dispel the doubts that are plaguing everybody right now, especially in the Western world. So if we can put these doubts to some rest, then it's only upward from there. It's an essential part of being healthy. So I won't be starting from the start. I'll just cover one aspect that I think relates to that'll be interesting to read from this work. I'll read the afterword right now for you guys. Okay, and then this afterword is very different than the rest of my work because I wrote it from my heart, and it's not the cold dissecting analysis of the rest of the work that goes through a more scientific process. But a lot of people have said to me that they benefited from the afterword, so I thought I'd read it, and inshallah throughout the course of this series I'll be reading the entire book. So in the afterword, I say, Bismillah. The famous Gnostic Ibn Atta'illah wrote in an aphorism in his book, Lataif al-Minan, that the masters of argument and discursive proof are mere laymen before those who directly behold the divine. Arbab al-Dalail wal-Burhan awam inda ahl shuhudi wal-ayan. I don't want to say what he means is that my entire investigation was a waste of time, but it sure is close. I cannot help but agree. Somewhere in the middle of when I was giving many years of my life researching this topic, Ibn Atta'illah's words began weighing heavy on me. I was reminiscing of the mystics who did not endlessly ponder God's existence. They instead pursued forming a real relationship with Him. And like in anything of value, why wouldn't seeking God too require dedicated focus? Were these long hours of cold, dissecting analysis taking me away from an actual and beautiful bond with the true being? There have been people across history who have given all of themselves in such a pursuit. I have met some of them, observed them closely over decades. What stood out was how immensely grateful they were, to the point of being humbled by it even. I saw them thankful during their life's trials that break others down to despair. I, for one, can admit to being perturbed by much less. What were they seeing that I was not? Their contentment made me want to know their secret, asking what there was to be so happy about in the world. Their answer, intriguingly, was not from it. The world, all of these devout men agreed, was a mere prison. And I have a footnote here because of which many Muslims will know about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Ad-dunya sijnul mu'min wa jannatul kafir. So the world, all of these devout men agreed, was a mere prison. They had an opening into something far beyond. From it flowed the breezes of their joy. Interestingly, they too wondered about the rest of us. As the great Sufi master Rumi once did, why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? Could it be that we were meant for far more than merely knowing about our Creator? Could He have created us to potentially experience and uniquely appreciate who He is, to be those who He loves and who will love Him? I believe that God can open for us such a door. Although it is necessary to be skeptical, at some point it is just gluttonous. The mind stretches only so far. That is why I hope for you what I hope for myself, that we all realize when catering to the mind is enough. I pray that this material world may not be the limit of our knowledge. May Allah open our hearts to Him, and nothing is difficult for the Divine. I hope that we do get a chance to read this entire work and I'll take questions as well, and hopefully we'll give a small commentary on various aspects, like, I got this beautiful work of art done on the cover. This was done by a Turkish calligrapher, and I have some reasons why I've invested heavily into commissioning a work of art for the cover, not just going with just any old design. But inshallah we'll get those things if people are interested, and jazakallah khair. Topic that I think is going to be really interesting for people is the medicine of the Prophet. And this is something that a lot of places try to teach, and this book is very popular. I see it everywhere I go, but I haven't found many people who really understand the book when they read it. And even courses and people who try to teach it, especially from like a medical doctor's background, this type of Eastern therapy of energetics is not studied, so it's not understood, and it's hard to break down this information. So let's give it a shot. I can try to break down some of the words and the concepts here, which if people are more interested, we could cover more of it. So let's look at some parts here. So this is a very interesting concept. The balance of moisture and heat. Bismillah. Moisture is essential for a healthy body, and the body depends on it to resist and balance heat. On the other hand, heat helps its coction. Now, these are some old words used in these books. So we have old dictionaries that can be used to understand what the word coction, for example, is. Let's see here. Coction. Digestion, or the process of digestion. Okay, so they're talking, coction means the digestive processes. All right. So on the other hand, heat helps its digestive processes, which is true. Okay, and to expel ejecta. Okay, ejecta is another word. This word I'm familiar with. It's for the digestive juices that are secreted by various organs. So to help digestions, to expel the digestive fluids and extract the needed nutrients. Otherwise, the unbalanced moisture will vitiate and hamper the body's natural functions. Moisture is an essential element for heat, and without it, temperature will rise and the body will dry up and spoil. Therefore, moisture and heat complement one another, and together these help balance the body's functions. All right, so very, very interesting. Let's turn a little bit to, see, in the Eastern therapies, there is a concept of yin and yang, okay? So the body has a yin elements, okay, and has yang elements, all right? The yang elements is represented by light colors, white and red and hot and heat, all right? Upward movement, motion, right? Yin is darker colors, cold, rest, slower movements or rest, and downward motion, right? Oftentimes associated with women, associated with men. So the yin and yang are opposites, and we both have, and it's just a description of the energetics in the body, which the way the Eastern therapies and all the prophetic therapies and everything are always talking in that regard. We'll see, actually, we'll read a little bit more to see how the Prophet ﷺ uses even in his food. And so a healthy person wants to have the yin and the yang aspects of the health in balanced and to be used as needed. So if you're in motion, you want your yang side to take over and give you enough energy to do things. But if you have low yang, right, then when it comes time to do something, you might feel lethargic. That means you have too much yin in your body. That could be moisture, that could be coldness, that could be damp foods. So this, in Eastern therapies, this dampness needs to be, and this coldness need to be decreased, so you have enough yang so that when you come down to energy, you don't feel lethargic. Similarly, if you have too much yang energy, you're eating too many hot foods, your constitution has too much heat in it, men oftentimes can have too much yang naturally. It could be a hormonal problem. Then when it comes down to sleep, then the yin should take over and help you fall asleep. But because you have too much yang, the yin is not able to take over, and you're not able to get restful sleep. So the balance of these organs is really important. Of course, it's just very superficial. We can go into it further too. But the Prophet ﷺ was cognizant of this. So it's very interesting because that many Muslims as well are familiar, especially in the eastern part of the world, that certain foods have certain energetics. So, for example, Each food is classified as having one or more flavors. Each flavor has a specific effect and benefits a particular organ. The balance of flavors may be tilted to suit our energetic needs. The flavors of foods are indicated by the following symbols. So there's charts available where these symbols will identify the ta'thir, or the effect of the foods will have. And many people from the subcontinent might say ta'sir. What's the ta'sir of it? It comes from the Arabic word ta'thir, the effect. So if, for instance, it's a sweet food, then sweet flavors arise from the earth element, okay, the digestive capacity, and benefit the spleen, which is the digestive capacity. And sweet foods strengthen, moisten, and help tonify deficiency. So it adds energy to the digestive capacity and adds moisture. Of course, sweet flavors, if you add too much, then it can add, if the moisture is too high, then that causes something called dampness. Similarly, various foods have an effect on whether or not they have a hot or cold nature. So interesting, if you look at dates, right, we can maybe increase the size. This is a chart which basically shows the ta'thir, the effect of certain foods that's used in thousands of years old of understanding foods this way. Dates are a sweet food, so it adds moisture. It helps the liver, lungs, and the spleen, okay, just like the chart showed. And it has yin and yang elements. But watermelon, let's see, do we have watermelon here? Yeah, watermelon. Watermelon is also sweet, but it has a predominant yin feature. And so dates and watermelon, for example, are opposite in their nature, and they're balanced foods. This, we can now turn back to our texts about how the Prophet ﷺ ate. And we find now a deep insight about how the Prophet understood the energetics of food. It says, God's Messenger ﷺ adhered to the staple diet of his surrounding community, including meat, fruits, bread, and dates. Besides other pungent, let's see here. Actually, I get that out of the way. Sorry. Besides other supplements mentioned in this book, if a particular food was too pungent and required blending, he'd usually added secondary ingredients to accomplish the needed balance, such as watermelon to balance the heat of dates. And if he could not find it, or if hunger drove him to eat the one kind of food available, he usually limited his intake of food and avoided excess. On the other hand, if he felt okay, so now we're talking about something else. But the interesting aspect of reading these texts is that we can, with a complete understanding of Eastern and energetic therapies, we'll have a lot more insight. So that's one kind of very profound takeaway from the energetic balance of food that the Prophet ﷺ adhered to, and we visited in our book, Medicine of the Prophet, and we'll pick up maybe more sections at another date. So one topic that I thought maybe I'll touch on briefly before we jump into the other ones is homeopathy. Homeopathy gets a lot of criticism and skepticism, and it's all fair. Nothing should be accepted just because someone said so. So and homeopathy isn't very well understood. I use this book quite extensively, the Desktop Guide by Roger Morrison. He is also a medical doctor, and is a student of George Vitolkas. I've met some of his other colleagues as well, Dr. Hassan Sidat. I think Dr. Sidat, I know is that. The first name I think is Dr. Hassan. He's from Australia, and also an incredible figure. This group of homeopaths, Dr. Sheikh Hakim Arshleta, all these people have done a great service for the Muslim community, or for people in large, for the Ummah, by taking a very methodical approach of detailing remedies and their symptoms and their keynotes. And they're very fair people. So we hope to continue and explaining this aspect of these remedies in the fairest way possible. So I know if there's healthcare practitioners, medical doctors, other people who are in the field who want to know, then I will answer why this is absolutely rational and empirical and can be trusted, because we're looking at it from a skeptical and a reasonable point of view, and definitely from a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. There's so much research with homeopathy that it hurts. It's just that because we don't understand it, a lot of people are dismissing it, but it's just a matter of time. So let's take an example, sample remedy, and of course we will go further into details of these and how they work. But one remedy is belladonna, and I can read a little bit about it. The belladonna constitutional type. So there's different. Maybe I won't get through all of it, but I'll comment on a few things here while we're reading. In homeopathy, we have constitutional types, just like traditional Chinese medicine. So people have leanings, and their whole entire picture, the way they're put together reflects a certain energy, and that energy can be linked to, like Chinese medicine links it to certain elements, certain archetypes, and certain organs. The homeopathy does it similarly, but they go into a lot more nuanced difference, and so they link people's constitution to various particular plants or substances or extracts from animals, all types of things, and then they dilute those substances into a point which is beyond Avogadro's number. There's no molecular amount left within the carrier of the original substance, but it's still working somehow. And how that's working, we haven't figured out yet. So I know many people have speculated it could have something to do with nanoparticles, or at the subatomic level. We don't study these things at anything below a molecular level in regular science right now, but who knows what the future holds. Muslims have an understanding of water, and how water can carry some energy, even from the way the Prophet ﷺ used to pray and blow on water. And we have Muslims who've been doing that for a long time. Even in Malaysia, when we went, they have open basins to make wudu, and the water flows from them, and the people make wudu from them. And if you ask, when I asked, why are these open, like areas of wudu, why don't you cover them up? And their answer is not that it just looks beautiful, or it's a central fountain or something. They say that, well, the adhan and the Quran that's being recited always affects the water. So some people will know that from their grandma, blowing on water after she makes dua when they're sick. So I know Muslims can relate to this, but the homeopaths are basically saying the same thing, that water has this ability to hold charge, and then you figure out what that energy of that original substance is and how it matches with the constitutional type. So this is the constitutional type of belladonna. The belladonna constitutional type is healthy, vital, and robust. The mental state is usually quite balanced, except in the violent deliriums of this remedy. When the belladonna is present, it has a lot of excess energy, and they tend to get very hot and inflamed in their in the sick parts of the brain, so that they can go into these hallucinations, what they're calling it, violent deliriums, sick states. Belladonna is well known for its usefulness in acute disorders and febrile conditions, meaning when you have a fever. But its importance in chronic diseases is less well appreciated. In all forms of disorders, the conditions are congestive, intense, and often characterized by pain and throbbing or pulsation. So, we often give this remedy to children who have headaches or fevers, and their head is pounding. It's a pounding headache. The chronic conditions which should cause the homeopath to consider belladonna include intensely painful migraines, sinusitis, arthritis, and also hypertension. But it can be many others too. You'll see in this book how he has a section on all the various ways this remedy could be used wherever this type of constitution, this congested, full, hot constitution is manifest in even a different part of the body. Most authors have noted that belladonna symptoms come suddenly, but these chronic conditions may start slowly and develop further and further over the years. So this is a small introduction of the belladonna remedy and the constitution of it, of that person who needs it. And this is something that has to be matched. The acute stages and the chronic stages of the remedy have some similarity, but I think one of the best things that we could do is, for starters, is help people to use the remedies that are often most applicable in acute situations. I have a list of 10 remedies that maybe mothers or people at home could have a small little medicine cabinet of the remedies that they can use in these conditions. If you have children, you can kind of manage their fevers or their headaches and stuffy noses, belly aches, all these things with homeopathic remedies. And of course, you have someone will say, "Oh, that must be placebo." That could be a placebo, and that's why it works. And yeah, we'll talk about this of how it's absolutely there is no way this is a placebo because of and I'll explain my clinical cases. And it's not just anecdotal evidence because, as I said, this can be all tested through double-blind placebo-controlled trials, which I've actually done myself and run. And children who, for example, animals who don't have any understanding of a remedy that you're putting in their water, a disabled child who is developmentally delayed, has constipation, who's been given a remedy, his constipation would clear up. As soon as the remedy is not used anymore, his constipation comes back. All these things can be methodically plotted. And these homeopaths, or many of them are medical doctors, wouldn't be so deluded of thousands of cases, over 200 years being reported, and completely missing that this is just a matter of subjective feeling and parents just reporting something that isn't really there. So, but we'll talk about all these things. Perhaps we'll go through the acute remedies and the philosophy of homeopathy, along with some other things that would be, I think, hugely beneficial, practical for people to understand how it works. And of course, I'll be giving my own clinical practice of how I've used it over 20 years and why I think actually might be one of the main forms of modalities of medicine of the future. All right, so part of the call of a physician is to educate people on what to eat, especially as Muslims, because we have a tradition of understanding that the house of illness is from your gut, from your intestines. Al-Ma'ida Baytud Da. So it's often attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, but it's by Harith bin Kelda, who was a man, a physician alive at his time. And most people do go to their doctor and ask them, what should I eat? And because most medical doctors don't have much training in nutrition, maybe even a couple hours, couple days, in a semester there's not much time given if those students attend the lectures, and then patients are basically lost and dependent on pharmaceuticals, drugs to adjust their health. But nutrition and diet can be a huge part of that. So one of the features of our current society is a high intake of food and a lot of metabolic problems because of that, from polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, to metabolic syndrome, weight gain, diabetes. Everything is related to what we're eating. So inshallah, hopefully during this course we'll cover a lot of nutritional topics as well, and help people figure out what they should be eating, how they should be doing that, and doing it in the most healthy, balanced way. We want to be able to eat in some, to be normal. It can't be so restricted that it's hard to function among our friends or family. And most people who know me know that I love to have a nice meal and I enjoy everything. But in regulation, how do you do that? One of the ways to know is through your blood sugars. And blood sugars are basically whenever we eat carbohydrates, okay, so it's based on carbohydrates. Okay, these are the starches in our food, and like the sugars, the breads, the pasta, and whenever we eat that, it breaks down into a smaller particle called glucose. So glucose is something that is in our food. Okay, let's say you eat a bowl of cereal, which is pretty junky, pretty carbohydrate rich. So here's your bowl of cereal, right, that you just ate, and it releases. Okay, there's your bowl of cereal, and it releases your carbohydrates, and it's glucose that goes into the blood. Okay, so here's your blood vessel. Okay, this is your blood vessel. And the glucose that's from the food is broken down into glucose through your digestive processes, your stomach acid, how fast the glucose from the food is being released. That's called glycemic index. Glycemic index, which is often shortened as GI. So basically, how fast this bowl of cereal, or whatever you want to, it's not a very good bowl of cereal, but how fast it releases the glucose into your blood. And if it spikes very quickly, if this goes up very quickly, then you have a lot of glucose in the blood vessels. It comes out very quickly into the blood. And then you have to have something that is released into your blood from your pancreas. It's called insulin. All right, so here is insulin being released into the blood, and that makes the blood glucose go into the muscles. All right, so let's make another horrible picture here. Okay, here's a guy with his muscles. Sorry, but all right. So these muscles are now using the glucose that was from the food, from the cereal. Increased your glycemic index. If it was too quick, then you need a lot of insulin, and that pumps that glucose into the muscles. If there's excess, all right, excess glucose, right, then that goes into storage into like the liver. Okay, this is the liver. And then and that's a normal process. So then later, when you need, when you don't have food, when you don't have any more glucose in the system, let's say you have a small amount of glucose, then it'll pull glucose from the liver at storage and go back into the blood, and then you can use it for your muscles. So in a regular meal, this happens, and we use our glucose, and there's not much left over for the liver, and which is a good thing, because we don't want too much glucose stored in the liver. That makes us have a fatty liver, have fat around our organs, and our fat stores, not just in the liver, but all around the body, end up becoming bigger. We only have a limited amount of fat cells. We don't have more fat that's deposited outside the cells, but those cells become very, very big. And that causes various other problems, which we can talk about from points of view of estrogen and hormones. But what we wanted to help in our blood sugar regulation for most conditions, almost every condition, is to regulate how much glucose ends up getting dumped into the blood vessels. So this spike is not so high, and we can help it in a couple of ways. Either the sugar the food we're eating shouldn't have so much glucose, or it can have a lower glycemic index. So let's say the cereal was instead a bowl of oatmeal, and not the quick oats. It should be the full whole oats, because they have fiber and they slow down how fast the glucose gets broken down from the oats to glucose and into the blood. So you have then a lower amount of glucose that's come in the blood, and it can be used by the muscles, and a little bit excess goes to liver. However, if the glycemic index is too high, then there'll be a bigger dump into the blood, and then whatever your muscles use, they use, or you have a lot of excess, and then that'll get stored into the liver. And all these people have so much excess. That's why they have so much fat stored in their body. So you can either decrease the amount of glucose eating foods. So some people go into a full keto diet, which is basically eliminating all glucose and making it less than 50 grams per day. And they don't even worry about their glycemic index. But we could either decrease the amount of glucose or decrease the glycemic index of how fast this glucose gets released into the blood, so it spikes. So if there was like a chart, you can make a chart of with time and glucose. So with a low glycemic index, your spike happens slowly, and it gives your body time to use up all this glucose that's coming into the blood. But if the spike happens too fast, right, then you have insulin released, right? Then your muscles will use some, but a lot of it will stick around in the blood. Now, so glucose is a sticky substance, like sugar. Like if you eat candy, you have that sticky stuff that remains on your lips or your hands, and that's sugar. So that stickiness happens in our body as well. And if we have too much sugar roaming around in our blood cells, and we can't use it all up by the muscles. So that's one other great part of having exercise, is because you can either decrease the glucose, decrease the glycemic index, or make it rise slowly, or you can have your muscles use up that glucose, and therefore that helps to regulate how much glucose there is in the blood, so less is stored in the liver. But if you are having too much high glucose, your glycemic index is too high, the sugar ends up not being used by the muscles, then you have an excess amount being stored in the liver, or waiting around in the bloodstream, and this sticky glucose ends up damaging our blood cells, and it damages all the blood cells, damaging our blood cells, but also our blood vessels all across our body. And we have small blood vessels in our eyes, we have small blood vessels all around our body, in our heart, in our kidneys, and that stickiness ends up hardening them, and that causes aging and a less ability to be flexible and to do all the things and enjoy a good quality of life. So what we can do is adopt methods that help us improve or decrease the amount of glucose floating around in our blood. through the methods I showed you by eating specific foods, which we can go through, that have a lower glycemic index, or potentially doing a keto diet, which we can explain, that uses an alternative source of food, changes our metabolism to using fat instead and protein instead of as much sugar, and exercising, as well as monitoring our HbA1c. So HbA1c is a test that we can go to a doctor, and in the blood, what they do is they check, here in the corner, as I've shown, that there are red blood cells. These are the little cells that float around in our blood vessels, and they have something called hemoglobin. It has iron in it, and these hemoglobin molecules are in our blood cells. When there's a lot of sugar in our blood, this sugar ends up coming into our red blood cells, and then it binds to the hemoglobin. It glycates it. The glucose attaches to the hemoglobin, and then you have glycated hemoglobin. So this glycohemoglobin is testable. You can, when you go to your doctor, they can check something called hemoglobin, HbA1c. A1c. And based on its amounts, I think I pulled up something here. Yeah. Based on what level of hemoglobin A1c is in your blood, they'll be able to tell for the last couple of months how much glucose has been floating around in your blood vessels. So that could be, if it was between 97 to 100 milligrams per deciliter, which is about, in Canada we use 4.4 to 5.5%. If that's how much it is, then you're at a normal level. If it starts creeping above that, then it means that you are having too much blood glucose, too much sugar, too much sticky sugar in your blood, and you're inching towards diabetes, which is not good for our aging. And a lot of people are really subject to this because of how much we eat and how little we exercise, and how much the glycemic index spikes from our foods. Just having a Danish, for example, for breakfast, or pancakes, or these things, causes a high spike. Orange juices and these things. But other foods have nuts and have protein or have fat don't spike our blood sugar as much. We can go through these as well, but it's very important as patients and as a physician to teach patients how to understand these concepts, and then slowly explain what we can do to correct them. So here's just a small snapshot of some things that we'll also further go through, and what foods we can eat, and what exercises to do, and what things have different levels of glycemic index. Turn to traditional Chinese medicine now, because people have a lot of interest and questions about that. So we're going to use Between Heaven and Earth. It's a guide to Chinese medicine written by incredible authors who are also practitioners, and from their years of practice, they've summarized traditional Chinese medicine in a way that is very easy to understand. So I have a picture of David Goggins here. This kind of came up out of interest because just today I saw a picture of his tongue, and he's kind of seen as an epitome of health and motivation, and people look up to him, which is wonderful. But being balanced health is all about balance. From the traditional Chinese medical point of view, as well as our Islamic tradition, sees balance as the most important thing, which is governed by all the organs. And the organs we're able to check how healthy organs are based on how they appear on the body. So how they demonstrate how symptoms of those organs appear on the body. So sometimes symptoms appear through our behavior, our mood, the way we walk. The tongue is also one of those places where symptoms appear. And so in the tongue, you can see the health of certain organs, which is For example, the kidneys are in the back, the liver is at the sides, the spleen is in the middle, and then the lung and the heart are at the edge of the tongue. So by looking at these, but at the tongue, you can tell the state of the organs. So we should all get into a practice of looking at our tongues in the mornings or at various times during the day, and seeing how the state of our tongue is. And then there are certain practices and foods that we can eat that allow us to improve the functioning of those organs that are compromised. So I can turn now to a section that talks about some of the symptoms of the liver. The reason I'm focusing on the liver is because David Goggins, the way you can look at him and see from his the features of his face and body, that he has a very liver looking body. It's he has the features of the liver is his dominant organ, and that's a very kind of a stringy body type. It's very sharp features, and so people who have their liver as their dominant organ, and an organ that can be damaged if it's pushed too far. When a patient like that walks in, you'll know that they're going to have certain personalities and certain bents, certain problems as well. So Goggins being a liver personality type, I thought it would be interesting to make the correlation for you guys, because now we can look at this book and see they identify that a liver person, the certain problems that they can encounter is intolerance and impatience. They can be volatile in their emotions. They'll have some extremism. They're impulsive or over disciplined, right? So Goggins' whole thing is discipline, right? And he'll go out for his 12-mile run minimum, no matter what, no matter how he feels. They can even go to the point of even self-punishing. But these, by pushing yourself in this regard, you're also compromising your health in some way. So the people who have a imbalanced liver will have a tendency to vascular headaches, muscle problems, spasms, blood pressure problems, inflammatory problems in the nerves, and the areas in their body, various areas could hurt. You could have pains because of the liver's function is to regulate and control how blood and qi is spread in the body. So when it doesn't happen, then you can have sharp pains and various pains in different places. And they could have a possibility of abusing certain stimulants and sedatives to help themselves get through to reach their goals. I'm not saying this is true of Goggins, but these are things that are considerations for us practitioners that we are able to identify, because patterns, there's pattern recognition. And instead of audience being maybe not being practitioners, but if they see these symptoms in themselves, and they can balance their liver. Liver is an organ that nowadays is very compromised because of how busy our lifestyle is. Everyone is on a schedule, and they're just trying to get stuff done. So our liver is very compromised in the Western society. So here's the keys to understand the liver personality type. Now, as I said, there's elements associated with every personality or constitutional type. The liver, the element associated with is wood, whereas the fire is heart, and the lungs is metal. And we can go through these things a little bit later, but let's look at wood for now. So the wood type, it seeks challenges and pushes to the limit, enjoys and does well under pressure, admires speed, novelty, and skill, loves action, movement, and adventure. It likes to be first, best, and only. Not most people are not archetypes of one or the other. Usually it's a mix. But interestingly, this is almost like an archetype of a David Goggins type figure. So David fits well into this type of description. So these people, they recommend how to help to balance the power of the liver, which is to be more flexible and not so rigid, and to push through that can make you want to have time spent with some unforeseen circumstances that are important, like a friend dropping by, or giving your body a break from a difficult discipline routine. It's actually better for your health. And I know that like we hear from motivational speaking of Goggins, that he doesn't compromise at all and just likes to power through. And I'm sure there's some benefits to that as a person who's very adamant in getting to their goal, but it can compromise your health in some way too, as well as of course your relationships. And our understanding of being balanced human beings is that we don't let anything get too far out, so that your relationships are balanced, and as well as your health. And so here is a picture of Goggins' tongue, which you can see, which we can go back to from the picture. It shows that in the liver areas, he has here you go, the liver areas are they have teeth marks and are very compromised. The reason is because his yin fluids, so fluids that and nourishing fluids of the body are yin. Yang is the hot and fiery element of the body. So he has a very fiery type temperament, and a go. That's the fire element. And if that's too high, then it can deplete the yin aspects, and then the tongue then demonstrates that by becoming cracked and almost dry looking. This picture, unfortunately, is in black and white. We can't see what color it is, but the color probably would be more towards the red side if this was a colored photo. I just kind of saw this picture and I just thought it fascinating, so I thought I'd cover how the organs you can see in the liver area clearly demonstrate some struggling, and the fluids are all very depleted. So he has had little rest and he has had a lot of motion. The liver has worked a lot, so he's compromised his earth and spleen health, and his lung and heart element is depleted here, which could mean that he might be feeling quite low and hard to motivate himself, which I think he has mentioned, that he, no matter what, works through the low times, which happen a lot for him. He has had low times, and that but his way is that he just, almost like punishment, he gets himself going. So not all people are like that, and not all people can function at that level. And it's particularly may not actually be good for them. For him, it has had some effect on his health. So our goal here is to learn about health and how we can be most balanced. And you can do that through looking at traditional Chinese medical symptom pictures, and then identify them for ourselves. That's just a small snapshot. Inshallah, we'll cover more of these interesting topics. And let's move on to another section here. Sections, a brief snapshot completed. That, of course, inshallah, will be, this was pre-recorded, it wasn't live, but I'll be available for all the live questions as well for the different topics. I think we've covered homeopathy, a section briefly. We've done some nutrition. We've done some Islamic medicine, right? We are covering the book, which is about basically addressing a scientific method of knowing whether a belief in God is sound, and divine for critical minds. And we'll make sure we do again some exercise therapy, some posture, Qigong. We also have done TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine, and a number of other topics, inshallah, as people will be interested. Of course, yeah, I think nutrition we covered, so far a little bit of diabetes and blood sugars, but there's so much more to cover from, the gut bacteria and how that affects the mind, to food therapy, to permaculture and growing vegetables, and how to do your maybe making your own compost. All the things that we're doing also on our non-for-profit, which the visitors here are benefiting from. And I'll keep you posted a little bit more about that as well. So we'll have an opportunity so you can see what's happening here and how we're doing our part, inshallah, to benefit people from this wonderful form of holistic medicine that I hope as many people to benefit as possible, inshallah. Thank you very much. See you probably in the lectures.